Oh boy, I think that I hope this is working. Oh goodness, goodness, goodness. Oh, all right. Ding 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 ding. Well, it seems to. All right. Just needing to do all the typical Sharon. All right. Okay, one last little one. Sure. I think everything is good. I hope everything is good. Actually, I should probably test it out to make sure I can hear it. So this might kind of... headphones back in. Where are my headphones? Oh, there are my headphones. Testing. Back in. Nope. Yep. Didn't even have to do that long. Oh, look. How nice. Okay. Cool. Lovely. All right. I think it is all square up and good to go. Yeah. How you been? Hope you've been all well. Here some yeah. I don't know. Easily entertained. You could say I'm a little bit of a buffoon. Yeah. So okay. So this has been a hot minute. I apologize for that. But yeah, getting back into reading. We're at chapter 23 here. What has been going on? The group, the party, is in a town called Philodne, and they've been they haven't been there terribly long. Trying to figure out if their friends are still there, i.e., Jaharl and Tamila's friends, Vanine and Hardwin. If they are there, possibly, or if Dieter, Josephine's son, and his wife are around. Yeah, the Moon Troop is setting up for performance in town, and that's kind of where we're at the moment. We've there is how to put it. Rips and the Monk is still pretty leery-eyed toward Malam, and Malam's just kind of like, I don't know. I'm just here. And now there's this movement to go and check on this hermit out in this forest hermit out in the middle of nowhere, a little north in the woods, away from Philodne. Her name is Aavir. And the last chapter, before the little bit of a stop on having a chance to do some of these, we what am I thinking? They interact with her, and she doesn't want to do it at first, and then she kind of reluctantly does so. So that is currently where we're at. No biscotti. Actually, I'm drinking some tea. I don't even have any coffee at the moment, so I need to rectify that. So this will be getting back into the groove of things, sort of thing. So here we go. Chapter 23, Aovir's Gift. Sitting cross-legged at a knee-high table across from Aovir, Jaharl's eyes darted about the room, dodging her gaze, like a fly avoiding being swatted out of the sky. Nothing particular jumped out to catch his interest, He hummed a short tune as he placed a hand on the table's edge while resisting the urge to drum his fingers and summon a rhythm while waiting. The interior of Eovir's shack matched its outer appearance in cleanly clutter. From the ceiling, strands of incense and dried spices and seasonings, which filled the home with an array of faint aromas, dangled off to one side, like a shredded curtain left in disuse. The opposite side housed a large mound of matted down straw, which, upon closer inspection, a couple of escaped strands hid themselves in Eovir's light hair. The table, where the two sat, snugly hugged a wall with a lit candle placed in the center between them. By the door, Charles Boots stood guard. The guest moved his hand from the table to the ground. At first touch, he jerked his hand back up and felt a different spot. He touched another spot, then another. A curious look crinkled across his face. How's the ground not cold here? She doesn't even have a proper hearth or anything. It's a big reason why the home was built here. Eovir's emerald eyes cut through the dim lighting of the room, finally ensnaring Charles. Without hesitation, she placed a variety of dried flowers and leaves into a stone bowl. He studied her eyes for a moment and shook his head. They're green like that woman's from last night, but not quite the same. Something the matter? She ran her hand through her hair and caught a piece of straw, looked at it for a moment before flicking it away. Like I said, I just woke up. Sorry, I couldn't tell what it was. He redirected his attention back to the ground and placed his hand in a spot he had not touched yet. It's not muggy during the summer season? Nope, thankfully it's not. The seer blew a strand of hair out of her face. Taking a tiny stick, she held it until one end caught fire from the candle and tipped it into the bowl. A brief flame sparked and cackled in the container, followed by a yellow-tinged cloud of smoke snaking upward into nothingness. He watched her shake the fire from the stick. Then he focused on the billowing smoke lazily rising. Place your arms on the table, palms upward. She grabbed a dried red leaf and crushed it. After being satisfied with his hand placement, she sprinkled in contents in the bowl, causing the smoke to take more of an orange hue. A moment later, her hands clamped down on the young man's wrists. Reflexively, he tugged to free his hands, but caught the sight of the wild woman shaking her head. He settled down, but his eyes remained trained on her, waiting for any suspicious movements. Nothing to fear from me. Her gaze matched the young man's intensity. Her gaze matched the young man's intensity. After a short while, she released her grip and ran her middle fingers up and down both of his forearms. She drew crescent shapes as she inhaled deeply and exhaled slowly, pushing the smoke into his face. Now, keep in mind who you are looking for. Make it your every thought. Make it your only thought. Think of that person. Don't talk, think. And inhale. The smoke filled his nostrils, carrying aromas both plain and puzzling. Actually, the smells of summertime, the flowers, a fresh rain gathered in his nostrils. But as he continued to inhale the smoke, his other senses became engulfed by those scents. The smell of summertime morphed into an air heavy with humidity, and he began to sweat. The flowers, he could see them now, collected at the edges of a road. The rain, not quite a downpour, stayed consistent and filled his ears with its soothing sound. Eventually, he no longer sat in some shack lost in the forest and snow, but stood in a strange but not entirely foreign land. He opened his mouth to talk, but the words only formed in his mind. Where am I? He held out his hand and watched as raindrops passed through it. After waving his hand wildly about to no avail, he eyed a puddle, drinking in more water than it could hold, and jumped into it, but no satisfying splash followed. What is going on? The young man held his head up as two cloaked figures plodded forward, cutting through the curtain of rain in his direction. He moved to the side of the road, but they did not react to his movements. Noticing for the first time the thick forest shielding both sides of the road, he stowed himself behind the trunk of a sturdy oak to the south and hid. He observed the two navigate around the puddle he had tried to jump in only moments ago and continued without pause. In a flash, it dawned on him. "Hey, hello!" He hopped back onto the road and darted after the two. "Turn around!" The harder he ran, the thicker the rain became, like a fog rolling in. His surroundings grayed out, losing their details. As quick as the snap of one's fingers, Jarl sat in the shack once more. His legs had grown numb from sitting. The aspiring musician coughed as he pulled himself to his feet. Glancing around, he gingerly stomped in small circles and rubbed his thighs, garnering a mirthful look from Eowyn. "You all right?" "I will be once I move around. How long was I sitting there?" After a few more rounds, he sat back down, but continued to massage his legs. "And what was that about?" She snorted. "Like I would tell you my secrets. What good would that do? To know how I do what I do? I don't need specifics, nor would I ramble on about however you go about doing whatever it is you do." Jaharo peeked at the contents of the bowl until Eowyn yanked it away. He first answered with a squint before adding, "Not like I can tell much from a small pile of ash." Saying that alone could be enough. She flipped over the bowl, slamming it onto the table. Just some puffs of smoke escaped before vanishing into the air. "Do not repeat that to anyone, even those you're traveling with." "Why not? They need to know what you had to say. They don't need to know what you saw before the vision. They don't need to know what you saw before or after the vision, yeah?" The seer's eyes delivered more of the intended threat than her words. Not wanting to provoke her further, he agreed with a simple, "Understood." She flashed a brief smile. "Oh, you'd be smart to not be trusting of others, friends and strangers alike. It'll not end well for you," says the stranger living alone in the woods. She held out an open hand. "Hey, despite those odd ones always crawling around in the dark, I keep to myself, and they respect that and know better. They don't bother me." His head bent a little to the left. "You mean like the saw?" She dragged the bowl across the table, barely missing the candle, and left an arching streak of gray. "There are more than the silly Saul prowling around out there. They're probably out there now, but they're much easier to hear at night." "I can imagine." Eowyn scoffed, shaking her head. "I don't think you can." He leaned away from the table and glanced around the shack. "I am from Mahri, right at the border with Altea. There are plenty of oddities at night. Ever hear of the Argia?" "Mahri? Argia? I can't say I've heard any of that. I can't say I've heard of them. Should I have?" She opened her hands in a sign of mocking deference. He ignored the gesture. "Not really, but Mahri is up the mountains bordering Altea." "Okay. It's best to leave it there. As for what you saw, I don't quite recognize the exact area, but I think it's somewhere in Perail, just a season or so ago." His eyes widened. "Wait, you saw the road in the rain?" She gave a single nod. "I did." "And Hardwin and Vanine, you saw them running through the rain in those hooded cloaks?" "I don't know who they are, but if you were thinking of one of them, Vanine, I may have gotten lucky. But if you think she was one of those two, then so be it. But never mind." He shook his head. "It'd be like trying to rob honey from the flowers." At least you listen eventually. Some hear what I have to say and don't listen to any of it. Did you recognize the area? Jarl scratched his chin. I can't say it's completely familiar, but the trees look like the ones around here and the ones around my home back in Mahri. How did you say that was again? Alteo? Eovir, or Bioteo. Eovir guided the bowl to make a mirrored curved line, but looped the line in the center. The image of a pupilless eye staring upward into the ceiling. He imagined what Perel would look like on a small portion of the surface of the table and dragged his hand across it, avoiding the seer's ashen artwork. Say this is the Grinnell River, where River Split is. East of it is Calendar, and up the mountainside from there is Mahri. The maple and honey are fairly well known throughout Perel. Must be a quiet place even with the war if honey and maple are all it's known for. She lifted the bowl and set it upright. With an open palm, she coated it with ash and patted the center of the eye. The center of the eye, leaving a handprint. It's cozy, and there's nothing wrong with that. Never said there was. Their eyes met again. Judging from your reaction, you're certain one of those two is the one you had in mind, right? If the one was Vanine, the other one has to be Hardwin. I thought that's who I saw, but I'm not certain. Oh, the rain didn't help much, did it? His eyes drifted to his hands before looking up at the seer once more. I take it this is why you stick with using your gift to find things? Precisely. Evir clapped the ash from her hand. Go out and collect your payment for me. I need a moment to myself. Jarl nodded and immediately walked over to put on his boots, wrapping himself up in his cloak to contend with the cold and the snow once more. Once ready, he exited the shack and blinked hard. Though he couldn't quite see the bear, he felt the pet nudge by as he disappeared inside. After his eyesight adjusted to the brightness of the outdoors, he reunited with the group and explained his vision. That is peculiar. Ripson stirred the fire. Though what you said isn't far from what I've heard from others in Philadne. But rain and warm weather? A little out of season for that. Tamelia kicked at the snow. She did say that it could have been from a season or so ago. Maybe I saw something from the past. She rolled her eyes and looked disapprovingly at her friend. Wouldn't that be something, to see images from the past? Hey, I'm simply telling you what she told me. The monk spoke over Tamelia's bark and laughter. Mockery aside, unless they are far south of Rowan, maybe even much farther than Bruntil, the current vision wouldn't make sense. The vegetation is also a bit different in that area, so unless I knew exactly what the terrain looked like, I wouldn't be able to provide a better answer. Regardless, that is an odd experience. I'm not sure how much it can help us, though. You're certainly well-traveled, Ripson. Dieter pulled out a chunk of cheese from his carrying pouch. The monk's body stiffened. I travel as far as required of me to spread the word of Atuma. Must have been rough with the stains of history still so prominent. He grunted as his grumpy features settled on the farmer. I work hard to clean those acts, to redeem our present selves, to absolve ourselves from the sins committed by our past brothers and sisters. If others still judge me harshly for those deeds and acts, then allow them to carry such burdens. I will carry myself as I do. By doing so, I will show them who I truly am. So you naturally choose to be a grouch? Tamia parried a scowl from the monk with a cheeky grin. And I may be, but no one would ever mark me as a dullard. They traded pointed expressions, which earned chuckles from the others. The monk returned his focus on the farmer. Regrettably, I do not have much else to offer. That's all right. Jaharl, Tamelia, either of you have anything else to offer? The old man held up the cheese. This is part of the payment. I have that jar of honey to give her. She might even like the taste of it. Jaharl reached into his bag and procured one. Pass it here. Dieter extended a hand. I'll give these things to her. The Mahrian began to disagree, but a look passed between the two. He acquiesced to his traveling companion's firm but silent command, and placed the jar in the farmer's shovel of a hand. Here you go. With the paltry offerings, Dieter lumbered to the shack and knocked, and entered the home. Josephine divided up the wooden bowls to the 5 currently there. Ripson portioned out the thin vegetable soup as steamy wisps vanished into the surrounding snowscape. The group sipped on their light meal while they waited. Right as a distilled quiet began to settle around the group, they all stopped to look at each other. A howl of wind blew through the trees nearby as they had to shield their eyes and hold tightly onto their soup. The branches rattled and shook as snow freed itself from its lofty prisons. Adding to the sudden weather shift, for a blink, a blizzard gripped the small hovel and the travelers. But like a bout of anger, the snow and wind soon subsided. What was that about? Amelia jumped to her feet, balancing her food as best she could to keep it from spilling out. Snow squall? That's not a question, Taylor. Snow squall? Ripson groped the ground to his side and front. That's a snow squall? It was like a group of wild bees buzzing around. There aren't anything like snow bees around here, are there? Snow bees? Josephine couldn't hide her laughter. She grabbed at her side. Hey, you never know. The world's a wide place. Amelia grabbed a fistful of snow and balled her hand into a fist. Sounds like the dullard was on the mark for something, at least. The world is a wide place. The words had barely departed the monk's lips when he snapped his head out of the trajectory of the snowball zipping by. Care to try that again? I'm not a dullard. She began to ball up more snow. Then don't ask stupid questions. Ripson kept his focus trained on her hands. Before he needed to dodge a snowball from her, another pelted him in the back of the neck. The monk, in a fury, spun to face Malam, who was caught in a giggling fit. He sat down on his food and twisted his body to face the boy. Oh, stop being so serious. Josephine tossed her own snowball, hitting the monk in the lower back. Do not encourage this juvenile behavior. They are juveniles, you absolute grouch. She finished her response as her husband, followed by Eover and her pet, exited the hovel. What is going on? I live out here to avoid this sort of noise. Agreed. This noise is embarrassing, especially coming from yourself, Ripson, the old man added. Malam stifled a squeak, which still earned a venomous glare from the monk. Amelia's laughter filled the void, but she stopped after noticing Josephine shake her head. Dieter stepped forward to ensure the silliness was reined in. To more important matters, Eover has agreed to see us once we solve Jarl and Tamelia's issue. Why not now? Tamelia directed her question and gazed toward the seer. That's the agreement we made, yeah? Want more details about it? She pointed a lazy finger at Dieter. Ask your farmer friend. And you'd be wasting your breath. He crossed his arms. Like a sturdy bulwark. Malam snorted softly. The seer ignored the others and walked over to the fire. You made some soup while waiting, yeah? I'll have some before you leave. Bum, 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 bum. That is the end of chapter 23. Yeah. So a little bit of mysticism there. Where is it at? I don't know where it is. Shoot. Well. But a little bit of mysticism for it. But yes. So it there, yeah. So what is it about? Well, I guess we get a little bit of okay. It seems like either they're on the right way or they have gone south and stuff. And that is if it's them, and if there is sort of scrying-ish sort of magic in the world. Oh, there it is. I found the little clip I was looking for. Wait, no, this is broken. Oh, shoot. Oh, well, I'll find another one somewhere. But, yeah, that is chapter 23. So. Now it is time for chapter 24. As is usually the case with things. So, chapter 24, west of Flodnay. So, the group spent an uneventful day preparing for the trek from Flodnay to Sameen, after returning from Eover's, waiting for any of the guards to come speak with Malam, which never materialized. Even with the weather clearing to more favorable and slightly warmer conditions, they planned their journey to Malam's hometown. Would take 3 to 4 days on foot, with only one proper stop, the lodge at the Great Bridge of Perail. With some generous offerings from Malco, the innkeeper, they packed their bags and satchels tightly with some jerky, 2 small loaves of days-old bread, a couple gourds, a variety of apples, a moderately sized block of goat cheese, some strips of cured bacon, and 2 leather pouches filled with chicken eggs, cushioned by fabric. Due to the warming weather, more snow had not accumulated since their visit with Aevir, but a sharp wind did cut through the area from the north. Snowdrifts hugged the southern side of the main road, which, besides the occasional pocket of dirt peeking through, helped guide the group to stay on the road as the folial forest receded and open fields and farmlands accompanied the road westward and away from Falatne. Shortly after beginning their march, the colorful and vibrant presentation of the Moon Troops preparations. Shortly after beginning their march, the colorful and vibrant presentation of the Moon Troops' preparations disappeared entirely out of view. Other than themselves, the kaleidoscope of gray hovered above them, not threatening any precipitation for the day. Every so often, farmhouses dotted about in the distance. How have you not frozen into an icicle? Josephine marveled at the monk's tenacity or stubbornness in dealing with the cold, as he had opted not to wear his long-sleeved clothing today. Like with anything, the pain is noticeable initially. However, with enough willpower, the pain becomes manageable, almost as if it wasn't there. He stopped in his tracks as he braced himself for a strong gust. Once it died down, Tamilia shivered and stomped forward. Not here, huh? This wind is awful, horrible, stupid. Welcome to winter on the plains. Dieter scratched at his chin before wiping away condensation and clumps of ice from his beard. Without the trees or hills, the wind flies like an arrow and strikes like a hammer. It's especially awful living by a lake or the ocean. Is your farm by a lake? It's not like Marie has a lot of maps to know of lands too far from us. Charles shifted the weight of his pack. He turned to face away as a particularly crisp breeze descended upon them. No, but in another life, we lived by the ocean. Oh, and dwelling on it, the lake wasn't too far off either. The farmer and his wife traded an evaporating smile between each other. She chuckled as memories flooded her mind. Talk about a lifetime ago. Indeed. A light laugh sprung from the old man's lungs, and erupted into a cloud of breath that was immediately swept away by the wind. The others in the group dropped the conversation and kept quiet as the older couple reflected on times long since. The six marched at a steady pace despite the chill. Skipping lunch in an effort to save daylight, they stopped every now and again to check their extremities for frostbite and to set up 2 tents to temporarily escape the weather. Along the way, they each gathered as many usable sticks they could find from snow-blanketed campfires, once used by a myriad of travelers in order to make a camp of their own later in the day. They remained silent as they cut through the first serious snow of the season. 6 bundled masses, each with complaints peppering their thoughts, focused on the person in front of them. As for the monk in charge, he kept his eyes trained a short distance ahead, navigating around any possibly troublesome snowdrifts. Eventually, in the waning light of day, they moved off the road and discovered a spot slightly depressed, protected by short mounds, along with an old campfire. Not too far off were a string of 5 trees. Dieter and Ribson ventured to collect more firewood to last throughout the night. Josephine and Tamilia began to prepare a small meal for the group, while Jaharl and Malam carried out the task of setting up the tents. We only have 3 tents. The boy groaned as the next thought to cross his mind spilled from his lips. Does that mean I'm going to have to share one with that psychotic brute? Jaharl paused with a wooden mallet in mid-swing and turned to his newly acquainted friend. Oh, I didn't even think of that about that. Oh, that's all you have to say about that? I mean, it's not really on my mind. I think there are a lot more important things to think about instead of sleeping arrangements. He resumed hammering the stake into the ground, which took a bit of effort due to the partially frozen ground. And that doesn't concern you. He could. No, he will harm me. Malam's voice climbed higher and higher after each word. Come on, he wouldn't do that. He may look the part of a brute, but he doesn't strike me as a murderer. Have you ever met one? Malam cleared snow away the best he could for the next tent to be set up. The Mahrian stuttered in his swing, nearly missing the stake. He slammed the mallet harder and harder into the target and didn't stop until he was satisfied with how deep it went. Careful, you'll split the wood or work yourself into a sickness. I wouldn't know what we'd do if that happened. Maybe drag you back to Flodnay, but that wouldn't be fun. Josephine's words trailed off to where only Tamilia could hear the rest of her warning. I'll keep that in mind. He started on the next stake. A few hits later, he glanced up at Malam before recalling the question he was asked. And no, I haven't met one, but the boy lined up a few more stakes. But if you haven't met one, how would you know whether or not someone is one? He finished hitting the stake before providing an answer. Well, I was always told the smell of blood would be too strong not to notice. The boy danced around the canvas of the third tent, separating stakes out as he did so. Maybe? I saw Saul kill someone before my eyes. They didn't stink any differently, or worse than before or worse than before they went about their butcher's work. But maybe the stench of blood was already there. After erecting the second tent, he watched as his new companion mindlessly prepared the final touches for the third tent. He gave a look every few moments, but the distance in the boy's gaze never wavered. Yet, each time he opened his mouth, nothing came to him. He snapped back into the present. I hope my complaint didn't upset you. Upset me about what? Jaharo grunted as he completed the second tent and moved to the last one. Scooching closer, Malam kept his voice low. With you and Tamilia. A look of confusion covered the Mahrian's face. Huh? You and Tamilia. I bet it's been rough not to have any privacy these last few days. Jaharo wiped sweat from his brow. Then he tapped his head with the mallet. What in blazes are you talking about? Has the cold frozen your head? Wait, you two aren't... His voice died out as he waved a finger between the two Mahrians. He answered the question with a sour look mixed with an indignant laugh. No, not at all. We're friends. Simply friends? Good friends. A toothy grin stretched across Malam's face. Then you wouldn't mind if I share a tent, will you? Jarl snorted. Act like that, and you'll be fearing her a lot more than Ribson. Sounds like you're simply trying to scare me into dealing with that grouchy monk. After hammering the last stake into the ground, he tossed the mallet close to the pile of their things. I'm only saving you from embarrassing yourself. The boy peered off into the distance. Well, we'll know soon enough. It looks as if those two are on their way back with a lot of firewood. Okay. All right. One of the small loaves was sliced into 6 pieces and shared amongst the group. And the strips of bacon lined the pan over a weak fire until they started to sizzle and liven up the camp with its aroma. The gourds were chopped into chunks, salted, and then added to the bacon. Around the campfire, water skins filled with ice more than water soaked in the heat of the paltry flames. Josephine passed everyone some of the light meal when it was ready. Once they had their fair share, she set the small pan, layered with with bacon grease to the side. She filled the small kettle with clean snow and hung it above the fire from the makeshift tripod her husband had made. To shield the fire from any blustery wind, but also to warm themselves up, the group huddled in a circle close to the flames. They munched on their food in silence, as though their throats had been frozen by the day's travel. Slow and deliberate, they ate, sometimes checking their containers. After a handful of smaller bites, Jahal grabbed his water skin and gave it a shake. He nodded with approval at the sounds of sloshing, and took a swig. His teeth ached briefly as he poured the brisk liquid down his throat. Content with his drink, he bit into a part of the bread, holding onto a chunk of gourd, and smiled. It's not a lot, but it's warm. Once the snow in the kettle had melted and began bubbling, Josephine dug into a pouch of her bag in her bag. Josephine dug in a pouch in her bag and pulled out a cloth filled with dried rose hips. She balled the contents into the center and knotted off the cloth's corner. After rolling it into the palm of her hand for a moment and feeling content it would stay lodged as a ball, she tossed it into the boiling water. We'll have some rosehip tea before long, she rubbed her husband's shoulder. Thank you, dear. Dieter cleared his throat with a series of serious coughs and turned to Jahar and Tamilia. Do you think I could use some of your honey for my tea? Sure, I'll grab some. He jumped to his feet and sought out his bag in one of the tents. I know you two don't have much. Don't worry about it. Tamilia heard a bite. That wouldn't be too kind of us to travel together and not help each other out. She's right, and that cough doesn't sound too pleasant. Are you sure you'll be fine? Ripson devoured the last piece of his meal. We're halfway between Philodne and the bridge, so turning back if this worsens would be best. The farmer put up a hand in protest. I'll be fine. Some tea with honey and a proper night's rest away from the cold will suffice. There's still a little bit of daylight. Get a warm drink in you, and you'll be ready to get plenty of sleep. His wife grabbed the kettle and filled her husband's water skin. She poured the rest in the other containers, finishing by the time Jahar returned with the honey. He passed the jar to the farmer. Hey, Tamilia, we still have a whole extra jar of honey and 2 jars of maple. Oh, that's good. Hopefully we can trade it without too much trouble if we need to. She took a cautious sip of her tea, but mumbled a pleasant surprise that it didn't burn her mouth. This is nice. We haven't gotten too much from bartering with those, though, now that I think about it. That's how it goes sometimes. Ripson surveyed the area as the approach of dusk began to rob the scenery of its color. Josephine placed her drinking canteen to her lips before drawing it back. Yeah, it can be heartbreaking to have a crop ruined by a badly timed rain. Sometimes it's a crop no one wants to buy, even though they were starving for it the previous year. Dieter shook his water skin to better mix the honey and tea before gulping down half of it. Season's toil left to spoil. He might end up with a stomach ache before a cold, drinking so much so quickly. Malam nibbled on his strip of bacon. Oh, don't worry about my husband, she chuckled as she bit into a piece of bread. He could drink a pond before the fish had any idea the water was gone. The old man downed the remainder of his tea. They've also said I could drink rivers dry, but that's another one for another time. I trust you 5 can figure out the night watch. We'll be fine. Get your rest, dear. With that, the farmer disappeared into the tent farthest from the road. The others finished their food and sipped on their tea quietly. Every now and again, Ripson broke a branch and lobbed its pieces into the fire. Once they had all finished, the monk was first to speak up again. I'll watch the whole night. Just give me a blanket. Absolutely not. Josephine shot a look at Malam, who was excitedly dancing in his seat. Thankfully, it's not as cold as it was during the day, so we all can help. so we can all help. It may warm a little tonight, so no one can complain. And if you're going to get some, and you're going to get some sleep. I don't care if I sound like your mother in saying it. Careful thinking the snow is gone for a while. We may have another couple days before it sticks around until spring. The monk glanced around the area, imagining the snow building up, only to ultimately melt, turning the fields into a muddy, slushy mess. Ignoring my protest won't change my thoughts on it. I won't allow you to sit out here freezing your backside to the ground. Farmer brushed some loose snow off of her clothes. Josephine and Ripson locked eyes as the others glanced at one another. The monk tilted his head in one direction, but before the younger trio could discern the motion's meaning, the farmer's wife shook her head. Jahar leaned close to his friend. For as much as he pushes, she pushes back as hard, if not harder. She mirrored her friend. She puts up with Dieter. Ripson doesn't stand a chance. The pair shared a laugh. Ripson tossed his hands up angrily. Fine. How should we settle this then, Josephine? She waved a finger at each of the four. Well, how about 3 shifts? You can take the first one since you're so energetic to watch. Jahar and Malam can go next. Tamelia and I can take the last shift, so we can have breakfast prepared and start tomorrow early. The monk crossed his arms. Shouldn't Malam be resting? He's still too young. If he can joke around, he can use his eyes to keep watch. Plus, he and Jahar can talk about music and maybe have something for us to sing tomorrow. To keep our spirits high. She smiled at the boys. Malam's shoulders dropped as though her look was like a shovel of dirt being tossed upon him. I guess, but I'm not certain how useful I'll be. Your eyes work. You just proved you can talk, and I trust your Harl knows how to keep a fire going. I guess. She turned back to the monk. Well, there you go. See, Ripson? But what about the sleeping arrangements? I don't feel comfortable sharing a tent with that brute. Malam's face contorted into a fear-filled scowl. Brute? Ripson rubbed his bald head. If I was the brute you claimed me to be and wanted to cause you harm, I would have done it already. With a tender gesture, the old woman stood between the two, with her back to the fire. How could you frighten a child who was only so lucky to escape danger of the soul is beyond me. And you, young one, Ripson isn't nearly as much of a brute as you paint him to be. But to give you some assurance, I have another idea. Ripson can share a tent with Jahar. Malam, you can share one with my husband. And Tamelia and I can share the last one. That way, none of the tents will go completely cold. The monk opened his mouth to protest further, but upon a moment's worth of reflection, he nodded in the affirmative. That arrangement certainly works for me. Blom did his best to mask his disappointment. It'll do for me as well. You'll be all right. My husband sleeps like a rock. I'll let him know so he's not surprised by me not being there. Wouldn't want you stealing kisses meant for me now, would I? She shuffled over to the tent and poked her head under the flap. After a quick exchange, she pulled her head out and gestured to the others that her husband was aware of the plan. As dusk settled around them, everyone but Ripson retired to their tent to warm up and rest. In a way, Jahar lucked out with his tent to himself, but he was greeted to a chamber of cold. Stifling his grumblings, he wrapped himself tightly in his blanket. Warming up the tent for Ripson. Will he even notice? Hopefully his meditations will keep the tent warm. A smile sneaked onto his face as a chuckle escaped his lips. Sleep crept not too far behind. Bum, 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 bum. All right. So, there we go. That is chapter 24. Making a little note for myself. Okay. Yeah. So that is a little bit more traveling, setting up for the night. All that sort of fun jazz. So, And I think it's also the first bit of proper travel with Malam in the group, too, so that kind of adds a little bit to it. I think you get a whole... What am I thinking? Get an idea or a sense of him being in the group, so... I think that's at least with regards to traveling. So, okay, next up. So chapter 25 is split into 2 parts. So we'll get through these 2 and then be done with reading for today. And split up into 2. So it's the just 2 of the night watches, or at least sections of the night watch. So. Yeah, so chapter 25, part 1, Night Watch 2, Jaharl and Malam. By the time the second night watch began, the wind had subsided. Gently, the clouds migrated elsewhere, clearing the skies and revealing a star-speckled night with the 2... What is going on? With the 2 moons, Liana and her lantern, quite present above. Though mostly hiding behind Liana, yet shining a sorrowful blue, the moon illuminated the area better than the group's pitiful campfire. True to Josephine's prediction, a warmth in the air lethargically nudged the chill away. Uneventful, the first watch with Ripson passed. When the next watch began, the 2 young men guarded the camp, taking turns walking the perimeter and squinting out into the unknown. Initially, Jaharl took it upon himself to take the walk, but after a few rounds, Malam offered to assist. A warm smile burned itself onto the boy's face after returning from one of those patrols. The Mahrian stirred the fire with a thick branch before feeding it into the licking flames. You've certainly made quite the turnaround in the handful of days we've known you. Malam stopped himself from sitting down as he peered into the darkened fields in the direction of where the handful of nearby trees stood. His attention to the question had been diverted to something else off in the distance. Huh? Jarl reached for a spear. Everything all right? It's no worry. Pointing toward the fields, he kept his eyes strained, trying to discern exactly what he saw. I think I saw an owl fly into that batch of trees. Did it come to laugh at us, thinking we're freezing our butts out here? He grabbed another stick to toss into the fire. The boy scoffed. A little good to do that. I hope he'd have something better to say than to laugh at our expense. I have better things to do than that. They? The owls. I don't think there's a lot of reason behind an animal's action. Owl or otherwise. Malam's eyes flickered. Animals have no thoughts and only act. The young man shrugged with about as much enthusiasm as someone being shown a stick. Sure. Outside of being hungry and lonely, they probably do as much thinking as the snow and the rain. Who truly knows, huh? Nodding to himself, Malam drummed his fingers on his thigh. Maybe those things have thoughts as well, no matter how short. Sounds a little fantastical. After picking up a stick, he crossed his arms with it poking off to the side. Next you'll say is that the trees and every blade of grass has something to say. Well, why not? There's nothing wrong with that. The boy pointed at the stick as his eyes widened excitedly. They could speak about many different thoughts and ideas we could only dream of. Not everything that can be said needs to be. I'll leave the thinking to the people and the gods. The Mahrian pushed the stick out of his grasp and allowed it to fall to the ground. People other than yourself, huh? He gave a cheeky gesture. Malam gave a cheeky gesture before gazing off into the darkness again. Jarl instinctively reached for a spear once more. Thank you, but I'll do my own thinking. I can only imagine how noisy the world would get if I could hear everyone's thinking. He tilted his head to the side and frowned. Noisy? Aye, noisy. Does your head get filled with noise whenever you think? After grabbing the falling stick, he turned the embers, watching some flakes of ash flee, only to land in the snow not too far away. Mom sat back down and shifted in his seat. That wasn't meant as an insult. I didn't take it as such. He tossed the branch down. It gets peaceful, especially if I'm thinking about music. I'll block the whole world out. Oh. He leaned inward toward the fire. His features reflected the mirthful dance of the fires, of the flames through the shadows. A shame you didn't grab your lute out of the tent. Josephine would have appreciated the song, and I certainly would have enjoyed working on one as well. As nice as it would be, I don't need the extra distractions. In fact, I'll take a quick lap around the camp this time. He hopped to his feet and slowly hiked through the footprints already made. In an effort to see the owl, he peered toward the trees, but they were too far away to discern any roosting bird in the branches. After completing a circle, he returned to the fire and plopped himself down. I don't know how you saw a bird over there. It's like trying to spot a frog swimming in the river from the top of a great big oak. I caught it flying low against some of the hills and snow. And even then, you've got some impressive eyesight. Certainly the best I know. Everyone back in my rig can see well enough, but once it gets dark, you're better off trying to hitch a ride on a bee. A wheezing chuckle burped out of the boy, drawing a concerned look from his new friend. He gathered some fresh snow and added it to the kettle. I think it was an errant cold wind caught in my throat. Let's hope that's all it was. Not one for winter? Not at night, that's for certain. Another raspy laugh followed. This isn't ideal, but it's at least nicer than it was earlier today. Charles swiped his hand in an arc and clutched as much of the snow as he could before tossing it behind him toward the road. Don't like it either. It's not quite that. I like the snow in winter, but it's not too enjoyable when you have to travel through it. Blom took the kettle and poured some into his water skin. He offered to add to his companions, but was declined. Upon settling the kettle to the side, causing steam to hiss like some angry, vaporous viper, he pressed the water skin around his clavicle. Like a whip, a burst of chilly wind snapped through the camp. The pair shivered as they glanced around the area for the origins of the gust. However, the night cloaked such a secret from their eyes, with a waving shroud of snow sparkling preciously in the moonlight. I know I've said it before, but it's a shame you didn't grab your lute. We could have strung along a great tune for Josephine. The boy did not conceal his disappointment from the campfire's light. I thought about it, but think about how upset Dieter and Ripson would get if they woke up to us having a party out here when we ought to be keeping a watchful eye for potential danger. But music and song pass the time so much quicker than stirring fires and walking in circles. I will answer that later. Oh, gracious. But music and song pass the time so much quicker than stirring fires and walking in circles. Jaharo laughed. True, but with your saw attack happening a little further west of here, and wolves and whatever else might be lurking about, talking and the cackling of the fire are about the best songs we can afford tonight. A grin flashed across the boy's face as an idea sprang into his head. Then let's lead the march tomorrow. We could. The road shouldn't be too hard to follow, and Ripson said it was a fairly straightforward path from here to the bridge, but why? That way we can devise our own song and still leave it as a surprise for the others. We can sing it as a surprise once we arrive at the Great Bridge. Oh, that's good thinking, especially if it's going to be a little warmer. The Mahrian rose to his feet and quickly walked the sentry circle. Did you see him this time? No, but I didn't bother. It could be daytime. I'd probably not see that bird. I could give it a call.
You do bird calls as well? I have some practice, but I wouldn't describe myself as a perfect mimic. He motioned for his fellow music lover to follow him a few steps away from camp and beyond its perimeter. Once satisfied with the darkened location, he cupped his hands close to his mouth and arched his back, then lurched his shoulders forward. The boy of many talents made sounds which at first came off more like poorly loud breathing, but after a couple attempts he sounded much more like the Lucier whistle of an owl's call than anything his companion could muster. I cannot do that. Jahal nodded in wonder as he watched the trees for any movement. After a few more calls, the two silently observed and waited. No clear signs of the owl manifested at first, but a few moments later, the hoots were answered in kind by a similar sounding call from the darkness. The two traded excited looks. "Well done, Malam." He patted his friend's shoulders with ever-growing appreciation. It was nothing. My father's a great admirer of hunters, so he'd always invite them to dinner and the like. Between you and me, he probably would chide me for not having practice more often. I could have done better. They returned to the fire. Still, for as young as you are, you've lived a lot more life than I have. I've stayed mostly in Mahri. It's embarrassing to admit, but I've only been as far as River Split before this trip. Well, I did travel south a little of it and saw Clohall in the distance, but that is it. I guess when you have all you need, the world's as big as you want it to be. Jarl grabbed his spear and stuck it in the ground. It's been my problem, I guess. I want to travel and join the Moon Troop ever since I saw them perform in River Split when I was younger, but it's a difficult thing to do. Malam returned to where he was sitting. Why is that? He leaned against the spear, tapping the side of his head with the shaft in a vain effort to prod his thoughts along. Responsibilities to my family and village, I'd say. Did you agree to those? The boy stretched out his legs. Jarl tipped the butt of his spear to his friends and tipped the butt of his weapon in his friend's direction. Isn't that what family and a community are? Aren't they bonds forged in unspoken agreements to help, support, and love one another? Would you say the same of the master and the slave? Of the gods and the people? Of the powerful and the weak? Those are all unspoken agreements. If that is their fate, why try to fight it? It sounds like a stupid way to struggle. Malam snorted. Fate, huh? That sounds more cruel and fickle than any god or beast I've learned about. A frown not too dissimilar from ones usually made by Ripson and Dieter formed on the Mahrian's face. Maybe it is. And which god do you pray to so I can stick my tongue out and toss my own heated words at them? I apologize. I just can't see fate as true. But from what you tell me, I wonder if you prescribe to that idea because of the torments you're living through. Jahar blinked. Huh? What do you mean by that? Malam gestured at his friend. Look at yourself. You want to travel the world, but you've been fated to stay rooted in some mountain village, while the world goes about its business, unaware of you and your music. Does that not sound like torment? Like living in some prison? He listened and dwelled on what was said. Took a moment to grab another stick to stir the fire, not quite paying enough attention to whether or not it truly needed stirred. He sharply exhaled before replying. I still plan on traveling. I even had a chance to perform for Asen in River Split, and she sees promise, though she did add I needed a little more work. Shaking his head in response, a saddened look gripped the boy. You say this now, but what happens if you're needed to stay in Mahri when you return? Fate decides to give you this gift of music, but only as a torment? You could end up never sharing it with the world. I'd be able to share it with my family and the other villagers. But sooner or later, that will stagnate. Your gift will stay locked in a prison of only the chords you learn through your own ears. The rhythm you adopt is nothing more than your own heartbeat. You know exactly what I mean, right? You'll end up musically frozen if you haven't already done so. Conflicted, the aspiring musician inhaled through his nostrils deeply. Cold air stabbed at his throat and lungs. My thinking pose. Has that been the reason why I haven't been able to finish this latest song? Are conversations like this being missed because no one else has music in their blood? My parents always said I was born under Saedral's watch, but no one else in Mahri in the last few generations has. Is that it? Fate plays me a trouble in hand simply to test me? Simply out of some divine sense of boredom? Spite? Are we nothing more than slaves to fate, and it judges us harshly? Jaharl, hey, Jaharl. The boy tugged at his friend's sleeve, snapping him out of his inner questionings. I apologize if I said something untoward to you. He waved the concern away with weakly, with a fleeting smile. No, you're all right. I haven't really spoken too deeply about my music nor my situation other than simply saying what I'd like to do. This is a welcome change. That's good to hear. Much brighter smile sprung from Malam's features. A much brighter smile sprung from Malam's features. He pointed to one of the constellations in the sky. The cart has pulled up to there, so let's wake up Josephine and Tamilia. I'll get them up. You can get started on your rest. Are you certain? Yeah, it's fine. Right before the two split, Malam let out a sigh. Some advice my father has given me might do you some good. All gifts spoil. They all grow old and become frail. Some spoil sooner than others. Don't let yours go to waste without using it. Jarl turned to him and mulled it over briefly before nodding thoughtfully. Thank you. He simply bowed slightly and hastily ducked into the tent, only to be greeted by a seated Ripson gazing forward in meditation. Surprised, the boy caught himself from falling backwards as the monk remained stone-faced, unwavering, despite the sudden interruption. Sorry, wrong tent. Good night. He didn't wait for a response and dove into the other tent while ignoring the look from his friend. Inside, the old farmer was snoring softly, but that did not deter Malam's pursuit for rest. Before long, sleep descended upon him with a smile carved on his face. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so yeah, that was part 1 for chapter 25. So yeah, it was a little bit more. I don't remember writing any of that. There's some. That's what I don't know. That's gotcha thinking, philosophizing. Yeah, what do you do with the gifts that you are given? You know, something to also take note of is when you have everything you want, the world is as big as you want it. But, you can't share it with the world. Anyways, last little chapter here. It is just a handful of pages. It is chapter 25, part 2. Night Watch 2 with Josephine and Tamilia. Finish that up and then I'll be done for the reading for today. Tamilia brandished her blade, taking care to point it downward to avoid reflecting too much moonlight out into the darkness. She had offered to take sole responsibility for the perimeter walks while Josephine tended to the fire and prepared breakfast for the others when it was time, to which the farmer agreed. While bounding side to side, she smiled, feeling her steps had more bounce to them than she had expected after yesterday's march. Each crunch of snow sounded like a victory over some foe to her. Though dawn had still not broken, the day already felt as if it was promising to be grander than yesterday, especially as the chill in the air had evaporated entirely. Taking a few strides beyond the perimeter, she gripped her sword tight and paused. She waited, not for any external cue, but for her body to instinctively begin the attack on the invincible creatures she began to imagine forming around her. A thrust flashed forward. 1, 2, 3 horizontal slashes followed. A pivot to the right, and another stab struck out. A glance over the shoulder beckoned to squat, and then a brutal upward slice. Her shield arm feigned blocking a mortal strike as a downward blow pursued its imaginary enemy. Finally, a flurry of stabs pierced the night around her before sheathing her weapon. Tamila wiped away beaded sweat from her face, and after a quick look around about the perimeter, returned to camp. Through pursed lips, she sucked in air, but was still breathing heavily by the time she sat down. "You all right?" Josephine looked up from her cookware and the supplies she planned to use for breakfast. "I hope that little bit of exercise didn't take all the air out of you. We can't have more of us falling ill when there's so much ground to trek still." After running her fingers vigorously through her hair, the young woman exhaled a long breath through her teeth. "I'll be fine, just some sword practice." The farmer set the pan on the fire with a gloved hand. "That's reassuring, but don't overdo it. With the 6 of us, we'll scare off any trouble before it gets too close." Her head tilted to the side. "Why'd you read that from me practicing? Maybe I just wanted some practice." "That's fair." She added a cut of butter, then waited a moment before jostling the pan to spread the melting butter around. "But we both know the Saul attacked Milam not too far from here, and I haven't seen you do much practice, if any, since we met. I don't think anything will happen. It'd be foolish for more of them to attack the same area, right?" She skimmed the area as best she could, with the night draped around their camp. "That old man didn't say anything to his wife either about my practicing the other night." Josephine set the pan off to the side and away from the camp, or away from the fire. "Possibly." Her shoulders dropped. "Can't say I like hearing that, especially from you." A feeble smile found its way onto the farmer's weathered face. "My words alone shouldn't be what you hang your heart on, like a nail for your coat." She gave her a look of pleading encouragement. "But you're so comforting." "A gift that comes with age. When you've seen as much as I have, you start to understand a lot of what goes unsaid." "Really? I always heard that age only makes your body sore and your mind like a bowl of punch." Josephine laughed. "A bowl of punch, huh? That's new to me." "And sometimes you try to fish out a piece of fruit you want, and you might get it, or you might end up with the wrong kind, or none at all. Then I'd say the trick to avoiding that is to not grow old." She placed the pan back onto the fire, which only garnered a weak hiss from the moisture on the bottom from the melted snow. She grabbed the remaining gourds in their possession, chopped them into sizable chunks before tossing them into the heated pan. "And I don't think it's a trick any of us can learn. It'd be like teaching a flower to build a cart." "Perhaps, but it's not. But it certainly doesn't hurt to try." "I guess, but how can any of us stave off getting old?" "You're asking me like I'm old." The farmer sprinkled some salt and pepper from one of her pouches onto the cooking vegetables. "You're older than I am." Tamelia playfully packed the snowball and tossed it in Josephine's direction. She jokingly shifted to a different side of the fire, dodging the projectile in quite a delayed fashion. "How rude!" "Rude?" The Marine stopped in the middle of packing another snowball. Josephine raised and pointed the pan at her. "Well, how about hurtful?" She began packing the snowball again. "It's not like anyone's going to mistake you for my younger sister. But maybe your mother." She set the pan onto the fire once more. Tamelia scratched her nose. "Well, we really don't look too much alike." "And I aunt?" She chuckled at the notion. "I guess maybe a far-off related aunt." "I'll take it." The young woman scraped some snow from her boots as her thoughts suddenly steered elsewhere. After a lengthy pause, she mustered the courage to reassure her traveling companion. We'll find your son. We'll help you find him, even if it takes seasons to do it. Oh, we'll find him eventually. Josephine swirled the pan, about to have the chunks of food soak up the remaining liquefied butter. He likes to run off every so often. He's done this before, and often. Their eyes met as Josephine began cracking open most of the remaining eggs and pouring them into the pan. She tossed the shells away from the camp. Yes, he has. He can be as stubborn as his father. When he has an idea buried in his heart, there's not a lot we can do to dislodge it. Is this the longest your son? Is this the longest your son's been away? If not, it's getting there. I worry less about his safety and more about his wayward direction. She started to scramble the eggs. If he's focused, he can talk people into thinking the day is night and the night's day. Well, when he's not, he's about as useful as using a snake as a shovel. Tamelia laughed a little louder than she wanted to, as she imagined what that would look like. That doesn't sound too good, but we'll see to it that we find him. Thank you. Josephine looked upward and noticed the slight shades of color returning to the sky. After flipping the gourd chunk, she turned to the young woman with a serious expression, more like one shown by Dieter than herself. And my husband and I will help you and Jaharl find your friends. We know you're acting in their place. We know you're acting in their place if they haven't gone to receive the blessing yet. Tamelia seized up and stared off into the distance. How do they know that? Jaharl didn't say anything about what we were doing, did he? She slowly worked her thoughts into order to parry Josephine's comment. Forcing a smile, she redirected her gaze toward the farmer. Knowing how our friends are, they're probably in Rowan, far away from this cold. I can still get fairly cold there, but that doesn't change what you're trying to do, she insisted. Her eyes met with the antsy Mahrians as she pulled the pan away from the fire to scramble the eggs. Don't worry. My husband may not be too keen on your deception, but it's not coming from a place of malice, we think. Without quite letting her guard down, she fumbled in her mind for a moment to choose her next words carefully. It's not like that. Are you sure? She set the pan close to the fire, where only the closest portions of it heated up. I'm going to change that. Okay. I can't speak for Ripson, nor Malam for that matter, but it's not important. However, I will say, if Saedra is anything like those who follow her, she'll appreciate the extent of your efforts to receive her blessing, and see to it that you return home safely. The warmth of genuineness singed away the fake front Tamelia was presenting, as she smiled contemplatively. Thank you. Nothing to thank me for, but we'll do our best to calm those other two. The old woman set the pan on the opposite side of the fire. Ribson may be difficult to reason with, but my husband ought to be able to handle him, if it comes to that. On the other hand, Malam should be easy to contend with. Tamelia traced circles in the snow with her feet, mulling over what she had said while digesting the truth that her and Jaharl's secret had been so easily revealed. She looked up with a grimace. What's that about, Malam? Wouldn't he be even more upset? He is from Samin. Evidently, you haven't noticed him eyeing you like you're the prettiest girl at the festival. Josephine smirked as she placed the pan fully back on the fire for one last bit of heating. Just pass him a kiss if he gets a little out of sorts about it. No. Her grimace worsened. The poor thing. He'll understand. He's cute, I guess, but obviously not for me. Can't quite put my finger on it. Ah, so you and Jaharl are... No, we're just friends. He's already got his head too full with music and thinking about Vanine. That special of a young woman? Tamelia's features softened as she thought about her wayward friend. Maybe not softened. I want to do hardened. That would probably be the better way to put it. Hardened. Tamelia's features hardened as she thought about her wayward friend. I honestly don't see what he and Hardwin see in her. She's a stubborn bitch. Hearty laugh leapt from Josephine as she turned over the vegetable chunks once more. We're all stubborn bitches every now and again. She shook her head. Not like her. Well, maybe that's why they're drawn to her. Most men don't know any better than to think they can tame any man, woman, beast, or the land if that's what they're meant to do. Can't live with it. Gotta have dominion over it. I guess. She unpacked some of the utensils and plates for breakfast. I'm sorry, I don't want to talk anymore about her. I understand. The farmer divided up the portions as evenly as she could imagine. I won't bring it up again. Thank you. I can only hope they didn't go farther south. If they did go that way, I don't have any idea what's beyond Rowan. There are a lot of small principalities and lands with their own problems and interests. Have you been to them? A few. She set the empty pan off to the side. It's amazing how you and Dieter have traveled so much. Makes me a little jealous. Amelia set the food by the fire as she started to head toward the tents to wake up the others. How have you been able to do it? How have you two been able to do it? Live long enough to be as old as I am, and you'll be able to claim something similar. You have to build the boat first before you can sail, or plant the crop before you can harvest it. Sounds like practicing to get better with anything. Exactly. That's what life is. Every day is a practice at living. Do it long enough, and with plenty of enthusiasm, you'll never be weighed down by bitter regret, nor worried about growing old. Josephine stood up and stretched, reaching toward the dawning sky. Now go and wake up those lazy boys. We have a meal to scarf down and a bridge to get to. Yeah, that is the end of that one. We'll end it on a nice little note there. Whew. So, nice little comforting read. I don't have anything else, so we will continue next week's reading there, same time, 10 a.m. And for that one, let's take a look. That one will be... So we are currently on page 281. We are slowly running out of real estate. But, yeah, so probably be chapters 26 and 27. Yeah, those are both about the same length. And then, yeah. Yeah, we're running out of real estate real quick. About 140 pages left to go, so, woo, exciting. But that's it. Thanks for listening, watching, all that sort of fun jazz. I will catch you later, and, yeah. Have a good one. Take it easy. Bye.